So I want to get the very latest with regards to this and bring in our reporter, Mahlako Komane, who's standing by. Mahlako, a very good morning to you. So there was supposed to be this media briefing held at 10 o'clock. I understand it's been moved due to a cabinet meeting. What are you hearing?
Yes, Blaine, it's very, you're quite correct that this meeting has been moved, but it's my understanding that it was a meeting, I think, that was meant to happen yesterday, just after the DG had briefed that portfolio committee. There was supposed to be, I think it's the command council that they were supposed to meet with, so that they can get these plans that are approved, because obviously the department cannot make decisions necessarily on its own, but you understand that with the health risk that comes with trying to open schools, there must be some sort of consultation. So it was my understanding that that meeting was then moved to this morning. So I'm assuming it's that meeting that must then happen before the minister can then brief the country and parents as to what are her actual plans.
Yeah. So we were listening to these proposals yesterday, the Department of Education briefing Parliament's Portfolio Committee virtual briefing, and some of the issues that came out of there was with regards to the guidelines of social distancing. Physical distances in classrooms includes not more than 2 learners sharing desks, no hugging, handshaking, direct contact must be avoided. It immediately throws up questions with regards to our younger learners. How do you keep those children away from each other? How practical is it? What sort of reaction are you getting from parents around the country?
You know, Blaine, it's not even, I hear you saying that it speaks to younger children, but I mean, there are historical issues that come to play. The issues of overcrowding, when you're saying not more than 2 children on a desk. How can you really space out a meter between these desks for you to be able to say that you're able to have that social distancing? And, you know, when you speak to parents, and the parents that I've managed to be able to speak to, and also I think just reading what people are saying, parents are not buying it. They're not convinced. When it comes to younger children, you know, parents saying that, I'm sure we've all experienced this if you have a child, is that your child will come home with a jersey that doesn't belong to them, or any other equipment. Now imagine children intersharing masks. What then can happen there? Well, what is it that must happen? And also, I think to also bring it to the rural context, I mean, I spoke to some people. We were out in Motshekga, I think, and people were saying that our children get fed at school. This is break time. They have to dish up, and you cannot go and, you know, soldier or police children on the playground. They sit in groups. This is their time, the way they let their head down. It's, I think, perhaps maybe one of the reasons why schools were closed in to begin off with. But I think also parents, you know, they are really seeming to be very concerned, saying that if ministers cannot go to Parliament and sit together in 2, you know, when they sit there and there's that address, they sit in 2s on those tables. Why should their children then be forced to go and you know, sit in those in that particular fashion as well? But I think also there was the number 40 that was thrown around as classes shouldn't be more than 40. But then you ask, how big is the classroom that you can, you know, arrive at that number of 40?
40 is still very much a high number, isn't it?
How do you then achieve social distancing? It's still a big number. I mean, educators also complaining, but also I think also do educators now become you know, you must first sanitize, you must do this, saying that this is also going to eat into contact time as well. And also, I mean, there are many issues that I think that the department must really address. But what I am getting on the ground is parents are not buying into it, saying that their children are not guinea pigs. Are they trying to achieve herd immunity by using children and taking them to school? But also some parents are saying that what they then don't understand, that if I have a child, for example, in grade 12, this child they would start with that child, but I have 2 other children in various grades. If they come back and give us this corona back home, how is it going to work? Some parents saying, well, maybe if there's a vaccine, they're more than willing to let their children go back, but also saying that they don't mind. I think parents at pains to say that we all believe the academic year, children are losing out in terms of the academic year, but safety first.
Yeah, look, we know from data worldwide that children handle this COVID-19 relatively with good ease. They seem to get less sick, if that's a proper way of framing it, when they contract COVID-19. Still, they do get sick, and still they are contagious, and they can pass it on to their parents or any other elderly person in that home. So that's the concern. I just got a message now, Mahlako, from the Education Department saying that members of the media are invited to a virtual media briefing by the Minister of Basic Education, Angie, Motshekga, and the Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, Dr. Bladen Zamande. It's happening at 4:30. This afternoon. So we'll wait and see what comes out of that. But from what we saw yesterday with regards to the presentation, social distancing is one aspect. Infrastructure issues is another. Water issues is another. We saw there are 3,475 schools nationwide that require assistance with regards to water supplies. That's a big issue.
Definitely, and I think the coronavirus is bringing to fore that issues that we know that have always been there. Those differences. I think a lot of people have said this between the haves and the have-nots. I mean, if you go to some schools, I mean, we had the pit latrine issues, but I think over and above that, infrastructure seemingly a big problem. Access to water in certain parts of the countries. I mean, we're having ministers having to scramble for this, and it's no different to scramble around to try and fix issues that have been there since the advent of democracy in this country. And I think a lot of people also expressing unhappiness that suddenly there's money for the tankers, the tankers can move in and stuff like that. But I honestly think the biggest thing here is that these were issues that should have been and could have been fixed. Is it only today, I think, where the department wakes up and decides that these are things that we do not have at certain schools, the infrastructure, the access to learning. I mean, if I can just also say this, we've also spoken to learners that find themselves in rural provinces at this time. I, for one, can always say, and I think a lot of other parents, that our children are able to access online learning. You are able to somehow move things around, make sure that there's data, make sure that children are able to participate in online learning, and but it's not always the case. I mean, we spoke to a lady in Motsi, I think in Mahlako Komane, and she was saying that she's a single parent. Well, her husband is deceased, and she has 6 children in school, and she was saying that I now have to make a decision between buying my 80 kilograms of milli meal that cost me 280 rand a month, or I must get data. And what also, another thing was that she says that there's only one smartphone in this house. How do we then, rotate this around? And when I spoke to the child saying that, one of the children saying that they have issues of network. Sometimes there's no money. Sometimes we must try and ration this food amongst us. So I think it brings to those issues. And I think also it's also issues of do you move the school calendar around? Do you force children to come back and they could potentially get sick? What do you then do? But it also speaks to, once again, the question that you did ask was issues of infrastructure, and I think access to technology. I mean, you have Gauteng here. They're relatively better off than most, although not perfect. I think we must add that there's a lot that they also could do. But what happens to children that find themselves in areas which is the majority of schools in South Africa, if we can say so, that do not have access to those things? I mean, those speaks to issues of infrastructure. And then there's also the issue of procurement. If you try and fix maybe, let's say infrastructure with prefabs, how far is procurement? How quickly can we get those prefab classes into schools functioning? And I think a lot of people also just feeling like a lot of these things look good on paper, but can we actually implement? Is implementation possible?
But Mahlako, you're giving us a window into some of the concerns on the ground, some of the realities on the ground. We thank you very much indeed for your reporting. We'll try to catch up with you a little later on. Mahlako Komane live for us there.